I was looking at some photographs today of a protest held last week in the Bo-Kaap, and it is something that I think it was Leicester. Certainly one of my colleagues did talk about this. The number of people who live in the Bo-Kaap who are unhappy, A, at the number of tourist buses that are coming through that area, that beautiful, historically important area of Cape Town, and B, unhappy about some of the behaviors that the tourists indulge in. And I've been talking about this a lot. I know Mike's talked about it when he's been in for me. The pushback in some areas of the world against the numbers of tourists. There's some Spanish territories, Barcelona City, and there's some islands in that part of the world where they really are angry about it. And the other parts of the world where there is pushback. There's a feeling from residents there are too many people coming and looking at us and taking up expensive accommodation, which should be cheaper rental accommodation for us, and hogging the streets, and. Osman Shaboodien is with us now, chair of the Bo-Kaap Civic and Ratepayers Association. Osman, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. Nice to be back. Hey.
Do you have any sense of what the ideal balance is, Osman? Because there are businesses that no doubt benefit from people wanting to visit Bo-Kaap, and there are residents who feel very unhappy about the presence and people looking in windows and so on, and sort of walking onto your balcony without so much as a by your leave and doing a selfie against this beautifully coloured home. What's the balance that you would like to see?
I think the biggest challenge is, and there's no tourist management plan in Bo-Kaap. And I think that is what we've been calling for and try and discuss it now for a number of years. And it starts by regulating the traffic flow within Bo-Kaap. Because if you look at you quite correctly said that it's a historical area, and unfortunately, the roads and the streets do not lend itself to these big buses. And there's no parking area, and then chaos erupts. And then the challenge then comes where it upsets the residents and nobody wins at the end of the day. So our first challenge is to analyze what is needed. And I think we must start by the very low-hanging fruits, which basically is the tour buses coming into Bo-Kaap without any type of information or something. They just rock up. And at one stage, we did a survey. It can be as many as 65 buses a day. Hey? So that's quite a
Sure.
lot.
Yeah, I don't often drive through the Bo-Kaap. I try not to rat run, and so if the traffic is heavy on Buitengracht, I just wait rather than seeing if there's a way I can rat run through Bo-Kaap. But when I am there to see somebody or have a reason to be there, yeah, the roads are narrow and parking is difficult and so on. But how does one manage that? How many sort of routes are there into Bo-Kaap? How much are we talking? Are we talking booms? What sort of thing are we talking about?
Yeah, I think the first thing that I want to make quite clear, we're not anti-tourists. I think there's a number of people in Bo-Kaap that, not a number, but there's quite a few people in Bo-Kaap that actually derive quite a livelihood from tourists itself. The spin-off of tourists, we would like to see it expanded. And I think that's why we are saying, let's do a management plan so that people can feel they are part of the tourist thing in Bo-Kaap and not just looking like a zoo where people look at them and think they are different or something like that. They need to be the people of Bo-Kaap need to buy into the tourist plan. And I think that will work.
Yeah,
but before that can happen, we basically need the city council to buy into that plan. And it starts with managing the traffic. And the traffic is buses. That is giving us challenges at this moment in time. And I agree with you. Over tourism is also a problem.
Yeah. So what? If you have this conversation, if the city agrees to sit down and have a very specific conversation about this, what do you put on the table? Do you put on a divide the tourist day up into 8 until 12, 12 until 4, 4 until 8, and say 9 buses per, and you have to apply for one of the slots in that 4-hour period, morning, afternoon, or afternoon into evening, and then if you are found as somebody who runs a tourist bus company, if one of your vehicles is found in there without a permission derived from the application process and so on. I mean, how are you thinking of managing it if and when the city agrees that a management plan for traffic is necessary?
I think what is more important at this stage in time, that if the city agrees to the management plan, is to get a traffic plan, and then you get a tourist plan. And I would agree with you that when we look at the numbers of people that can come into Bo-Kaap at any given day, you're not saying they mustn't come in, but it needs to be phased in rather than everybody coming in without any notice. There need to be a management team that basically would manage the tourist sector in Bo-Kaap itself. And I think that will work if it's with the city and the law enforcement to go with it. And I think that is surely needed. But we don't want to send a message to anybody that you can't come into Bo-Kaap as a tourist at this stage.
I'm a little disappointed, well, I'm quite a lot disappointed that you say, Osman, that you've been trying to get the city to talk about this for a while. And I mean, it's not necessarily that the city has to agree with the Bo-Kaap Civic Association. They might have a different view, but at least you should be sitting around a table and discussing it. And the fact that you tell me you've been asking for some time and that request for a discussion hasn't been met is disappointing.
I think it's not about the discussion. We send plans, traffic plans to the city from 2017, 2016, 2021, updated in 2023. And I think the city is now, through our ward councillor, is arranging a meeting to discuss that plan. It's a very simple plan. You don't need to be a scientist to understand that there's a lot of parking space outside Bo-Kaap and not inside Bo-Kaap, and that the tourists can easily just cross a road into Bo-Kaap. So we're not saying that they must park somewhere else or very far from the area. There's enough places that was agreed upon many years ago by the very city that is there, but they haven't implemented the plan.
So ideally, you would like buses to disgorge tourists on the perimeter of Bo-Kaap and then to them to experience that area on foot, rather.
Absolutely, and that would work perfectly. But and I think we can gauge from that experiment how many people we can allow into Bo-Kaap and how many people we can't allow into Bo-Kaap before it becomes chaotic. But I think we need to cross that bridge first. We were never allowed to do that. I think this experiment is a good experiment. It'll probably work well for other areas too that maybe find itself in a similar situation that what we find ourselves in.
I am going to try and get the city on to the radio tomorrow afternoon, Osman, just to respond to this and
thank you very
to give
much.
us their perspective as to why they seem to be holding back on cooperating with the Civic Association. Osman Shaboodien, thank you very much indeed, Chair of the Bo-Kaap Civic and Ratepayer Association. And it's interesting, this thing of, I mean, I don't live in an area that attracts tourists in any way, and the kind of area in which I live I have a wall, but I do have a gate that people could. So if I am in the unlikely event that I'm doing something in what passes as my front garden, I would be visible doing it. But it's not the sort of place where people are doing that. But I found it interesting in some countries that I visited, some cities. Amsterdam is a very good example, where people are entirely used to it. It's part of the culture. You don't draw your curtains. Daytime, nighttime, you don't. You live your life open to the passing world. Berlin was another city where I was recently, where that is the attitude as well. I was having lunch with friends, having supper with friends who've moved to Berlin, and they're in an apartment block and they're on the ground floor, and curtains are open, the windows are open. They've had an egg thrown at them by a passing child on one occasion. But, that's the way people live. But if the way people live is more privately, then I'm not sure you can force that change.